I want you tonight, Ethan. It's been so long that you touched me.
Come, that's your last night with me.
I fulfilled your wish, now sign these paper.
Which paper these are?
Sign these divorce paper and leave my house now.
Please don't do this. I love you so much.
You know what? Last night, that Blackie wife begged for me to comfort her.
Careful, Ethan. Vanessa laughed as she curled comfortably against his arm. If your wife keeps staring at us like that, she might actually forget she's the help tonight and remember she's married to you. The circle around them erupted with laughter. Married? Another woman smirked, swirling her champagne. Honestly, I keep forgetting he even has a wife. Every important event, every business dinner, every charity gala, it's always Vanessa beside him. Can you blame him? A man added. Look at Vanessa, then look at Amelia. One belongs on magazine covers. The other looks like she came to organize the catering staff. More laughter. Vanessa tilted her head dramatically. That's unfair. Amelia is very useful. Oh? Someone asked. Of course, Vanessa replied sweetly. Every successful man needs someone at home to iron shirts, answer the door, and remind him why he upgraded. The group burst into laughter again. Only one person wasn't laughing. At the far end of the ballroom, Amelia Blackwell stood silently beside a serving table, pretending to arrange folded napkins while every word carved itself into her chest. She had heard everything, every single word. The cruelest part wasn't the insults. It was Ethan's laughter among them, not uncomfortable laughter, not forced laughter, real laughter. The laughter of a man enjoying the humiliation of the woman who had once been the center of his world. The Blackwell Legacy Gala was supposed to celebrate Ethan's newest acquisition, a technology company valued at nearly $300 million. The city's elite had gathered beneath crystal chandeliers and golden lighting to celebrate his success. Politicians filled one side of the room. Investors occupied the other. Journalists moved carefully through the crowd searching for headlines. And somewhere among the decorations stood the woman who had helped build the life everyone was celebrating. Forgotten, ignored, invisible. Amelia adjusted her breathing and looked down at her hands. 3 years earlier, she would have cried. 2 years earlier, she would have confronted him. 1 year earlier, she would have begged him to explain why everything had changed. Tonight, she simply felt tired. Very tired. 14 years of marriage could exhaust a soul, especially when every year demanded more sacrifice than the last. Across the ballroom, Ethan accepted congratulations from another group of guests. His expensive tuxedo fit perfectly. Confidence radiated from him. Success looked natural on his face now. Most people believed Ethan Blackwell had built everything himself. Few knew the truth. Few knew that during the early years when banks rejected his proposals and investors ignored his presentations, Amelia had sold jewelry inherited from her grandmother to keep the company alive. Few knew she had worked 2 jobs while Ethan chased business opportunities. Few knew she had skipped meals so utility bills could be paid. Few knew she had spent countless nights reassuring him after failures nobody remembers anymore. Success erased inconvenient history. People only admired winners. Nobody cared who suffered beside them during the climb. Amelia, the sharp voice cut through her thoughts. She turned. Margaret Blackwell, Ethan's mother, stood nearby wearing enough diamonds to purchase a small apartment building. Even at 65, Margaret possessed the intimidating presence of someone accustomed to controlling entire rooms. Her expression already communicated disappointment. "Why are you standing there?" Margaret asked. "I was helping the staff prepare for dinner." "Well, stop hovering around guests. You're making people uncomfortable." Amelia blinked. "Uncomfortable?" Margaret lowered her voice. "Must I explain everything? Look around. This is an important evening. Investors are here. Media is here. International partners are here." Her eyes moved deliberately over Amelia's simple black dress. Appearances matter. There it was. The familiar criticism hidden inside polite language. Appearances matter, meaning you don't. "Of course," Amelia said quietly. Margaret nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Then please remain near the service section until dinner begins." Amelia stared at her mother-in-law, near the service section, like an employee, not family, not a wife, not a partner, just someone who should remain out of sight. For a brief moment, anger flashed through her chest, then it disappeared, because anger required energy, and she was running out of that too. Yes, Margaret. Excellent. The older woman walked away. No apology, no embarrassment, no awareness that she had just reduced her daughter-in-law to furniture. Amelia watched her disappear into the crowd. Then she looked toward Ethan. Perhaps he had noticed. Perhaps he would come over. Perhaps, no. He was busy helping Vanessa adjust a diamond bracelet around her wrist, smiling, admiring her, looking at her the way husbands are supposed to look at their wives. Something inside Amelia cracked quietly, not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to change shape forever, because heartbreak rarely arrives in a single moment. Usually it arrives in pieces. One disappointment, one humiliation, one betrayal, one ignored tear, one cruel sentence, until eventually there is nothing left to break. Dinner was announced 20 minutes later. Guests moved toward their assigned tables. Amelia searched for her name card, then froze. Table 27, the very last table in the ballroom. A table reserved for assistants, event coordinators, drivers, and support staff. For several seconds she simply stared, certain there had been a mistake. Then she found Ethan's table, front row, center position, beside Vanessa Hart. The room suddenly felt smaller, hotter, harder to breathe in. People nearby had noticed. Whispers began spreading. Oh my God, is that really her table? They seated the mistress with the family? That's humiliating. She should leave. She won't. Why? Because women like her never do. The whispers followed her as she walked, each step heavier than the last, each stare sharper than a knife. Across the ballroom, Ethan finally noticed her. Their eyes met. For 1 second, one single second. And Amelia silently begged him to fix it. To say there had been a mistake. To remember she was his wife. To choose dignity over cruelty. Instead, Ethan looked away and smiled at Vanessa. That was when Amelia understood. The seating arrangement wasn't an accident. It was a message, and everyone in the room had received it. Amelia remained standing beside table 27 long after most guests had taken their seats. The conversations around her continued as if nothing unusual had happened, but she could feel the weight of every glance. Some people looked at her with sympathy, others with curiosity, and a few with the quiet satisfaction that comes from witnessing someone else's humiliation. Across the ballroom, Ethan sat at the family table beside Vanessa, laughing easily while photographers moved around them capturing images that would appear in magazines and business columns by morning. Each camera flash felt like another public announcement that his wife had been replaced long before any divorce papers were signed. Amelia finally sat down, folded her hands in her lap and stared at the untouched plate in front of her. She could no longer remember the last time she had felt truly welcome anywhere connected to the Blackwell family. For years she had convinced herself that things would improve. She had defended Ethan when friends questioned his behavior. She had ignored warning signs. She had forgiven lies she should never have forgiven. Tonight there was nothing left to defend. The truth sat in front of her under crystal chandeliers for everyone to see. Halfway through dinner, the host invited Ethan to the stage to deliver a speech about leadership and success. Applause filled the ballroom as he adjusted his jacket and approached the microphone. Amelia watched quietly. Once upon a time, she had admired his confidence. Now she recognized it for what it often was, a performance. Ethan smiled at the audience and began speaking about vision, perseverance, and loyalty. The irony nearly made her laugh. Loyalty. The word sounded absurd coming from his mouth, yet the audience nodded along, impressed by every polished sentence. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan glanced toward Vanessa and smiled before saying, "No successful man reaches the top alone. Sometimes the people who truly understand your future are not the people who began the journey with you." The audience laughed knowingly. Vanessa lowered her head shyly, pretending embarrassment while clearly enjoying every second. Several guests turned toward Amelia. Some looked uncomfortable. Others openly watched her reaction. Ethan continued speaking as if his wife did not exist. Growth requires difficult decisions, he said. Not everyone is meant to accompany you into the next chapter. More applause followed. Amelia felt her chest tighten. He was no longer humiliating her privately. He was turning her pain into a public lesson. By the time the event ended, Amelia felt strangely calm. The tears she expected never came. Something colder had replaced them. Acceptance. She left without saying goodbye to anyone. The night air outside felt cleaner than the ballroom. For several minutes she sat alone inside her car, staring through the windshield while city lights blurred in the distance. Her phone remained silent. Ethan did not call. He did not text. He did not ask where she had gone. 14 years together and he could not spare a single message. Eventually she drove home. The mansion that once felt impressive now felt empty. Every room carried memories she no longer wanted. She entered quietly and walked upstairs. Ethan's closet was half empty. Several expensive suits were missing. So were a number of personal belongings. A knot formed in her stomach. Then she noticed the envelope resting neatly on the bed. Her name was written across the front in Ethan's handwriting. Amelia already knew what was inside before opening it. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the documents. Divorce papers, along with a short letter. No apology. No explanation. Just cold legal language and a final sentence written by hand. This is best for both of us. I hope one day you'll understand. Amelia stared at the words for a long time. Then she laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because the alternative was crying until morning. Around midnight her phone rang. The caller ID displayed a number she had not seen in years. She almost ignored it, almost. Hello? She answered softly. Miss Amelia? An elderly voice replied. This is Jonathan Mercer. Her eyes widened immediately. Jonathan Mercer had once worked closely with her late grandfather. She remembered him from childhood but had not spoken to him since her university years. Mr. Mercer? I apologize for calling so late, he said. But I believe the time has finally come. Amelia frowned. The time for what? There was a brief silence on the other end. For you to learn the truth about your family. Amelia sat down slowly. What truth? Jonathan exhaled. Your grandfather left very specific instructions. We were to wait until you faced a crossroads significant enough to reveal a person's true character. Tonight several trustees contacted me. They believe that moment has arrived. Amelia's confusion deepened. I don't understand. No, Jonathan replied gently. Because nobody ever allowed you to. He paused before continuing. Your grandfather was not merely wealthy, Amelia. He was one of the largest private investors in Europe. The family assets were placed under protected structures decades ago. Most of the holdings remain invisible to the public. According to the trust documents, you are the primary beneficiary. The room suddenly felt silent. There must be some mistake, she whispered. There isn't. Jonathan's voice remained calm. Tomorrow morning, a car will collect you at 9. Several trustees would like to meet with you. Everything will be explained. Amelia could barely process what she was hearing. Her grandfather had died when she was young. She knew he had been successful, but nobody had ever spoken about vast fortunes or hidden assets. Her mother avoided discussing family finances entirely. How much are we talking about? She finally asked. Another pause followed. Enough that several governments know the family name, Jonathan answered carefully. Amelia closed her eyes. Why hide it from me? Because your grandfather believed wealth reveals character too easily, Jonathan said. He wanted you to discover who loved you before money entered the conversation. The words struck harder than expected. For years she had questioned her worth because of Ethan's treatment. Now she learned the people who underestimated her had never understood who she truly was. After ending the call, Amelia sat alone in the dark for nearly an hour. The divorce papers remained on the bed beside her. Earlier that evening, they had felt like proof of her failure. Now they looked different. Not because the pain had vanished. It hadn't. Ethan's betrayal still hurt. His cruelty still mattered. But for the first time in years, the future no longer appeared empty. Somewhere beyond the heartbreak waited answers she never knew existed. Somewhere beyond the humiliation waited a version of herself untouched by Ethan Blackwell's opinion. As dawn slowly approached, Amelia folded the divorce papers neatly and placed them back inside the envelope. Then she looked out the bedroom window toward the sleeping city below and whispered 4 words she never imagined saying. "You chose the wrong woman." The words were not filled with anger. They were filled with certainty. And far across the city, sleeping peacefully beside Vanessa, Ethan Blackwell had absolutely no idea that the woman he believed he had discarded was about to become the most powerful person he would ever know. The next morning, Amelia arrived at an address she had never seen before. The building stood in the financial district behind layers of security so discreet that most people would never notice it. There were no giant signs outside, no advertisements, no public branding. The wealth hidden behind those walls did not need attention to prove its existence. As her car stopped beneath the private entrance, 2 security officers opened the doors and greeted her by name. That alone felt strange. For years, she had been ignored in rooms where her husband was celebrated. Now, complete strangers treated her with immediate respect. She followed them into a private elevator that rose silently toward the top floor. When the doors opened, a large conference room came into view. Around the polished table sat 8 men and 3 women. Every face turned toward her as she entered. Then, one after another, they stood. Not because she had earned their admiration, because she already owned it. "Good morning, Miss Ashford," an older woman said warmly. The surname caught Amelia off guard. Ashford. Her mother's family name, a name she had rarely used, a name almost nobody knew belonged to her. Jonathan Mercer approached and shook her hand. "Thank you for coming." Amelia slowly took her seat. Confusion still clouded her thoughts. "I think it's time somebody explains everything," she said. Several people exchanged glances. Then Jonathan nodded. A screen illuminated behind him. Numbers appeared. Maps, corporate structures, investment portfolios, logistics networks, shipping routes, commercial real estate holdings, renewable energy projects, private equity partnerships, agricultural infrastructure, technology ventures, healthcare investments. The presentation continued for nearly 40 minutes. By the end, Amelia could barely breathe. The scale was impossible to comprehend. The Ashford Family Trust controlled interests across 3 continents. Its influence stretched through industries she had never imagined. The estimated value exceeded $48 billion. 48 billion. Amelia stared at the screen in silence, then laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because her mind refused to believe it. "This can't be real." "It is," Jonathan replied. "Why wasn't I told?" "Because your grandfather insisted otherwise." The screen changed. A handwritten document appeared. Jonathan smiled. His final instructions. Amelia recognized the signature immediately. Even after all these years, her grandfather's handwriting remained unmistakable. Jonathan began reading aloud. "If Amelia is seeing this message, it means life has finally revealed the people around her. Wealth creates admiration too easily. I want my granddaughter to know who values her character before she learns the value of her inheritance. Let her build relationships without advantage. Let her discover loyalty without influence. When the day arrives that she understands the difference between genuine love and convenient affection, give her the choice. Not the money. The choice." Silence filled the room. Amelia lowered her eyes. Every painful memory from the previous night returned. Vanessa laughing, Ethan smiling, the family table, the divorce papers, the humiliation, the betrayal. Suddenly, her grandfather's words made perfect sense. He had protected her from something. Not poverty. People. People who loved power more than character. People like Ethan. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Jonathan folded his hands. "That depends entirely on you. For the first time in your life, every decision belongs to you." The meeting lasted 6 hours. By evening, Amelia knew more about the empire than she thought possible. She learned about private holdings, board structures, voting rights, investment authority, legal control mechanisms. She discovered that although trustees had managed operations, for years ultimate authority would transfer to her if she chose to accept it. Most people would have signed immediately. Amelia didn't. Instead, she spent the next week studying, reading reports, reviewing contracts, meeting executives, asking questions, observing, learning. Because unlike Ethan, she had never confused ownership with competence. If she accepted responsibility, she intended to understand it completely. Meanwhile, life inside the Blackwell household continued exactly as Ethan expected. The divorce process moved forward. Vanessa practically lived at his house. Friends congratulated him privately. His mother openly celebrated. "Finally," Margaret said during one family dinner, "you can focus on your future." Ethan smiled. He genuinely believed he had won. The difficult marriage was ending. The glamorous girlfriend remained devoted. Business looked strong. Everything seemed under control. What he didn't realize was how many opportunities around him had quietly originated from circles connected to the Ashford network. Relationships he thought he earned. Introductions he thought happened naturally. Doors he assumed opened because of his talent. He had no idea how fragile those advantages really were. 3 months after the gala, Amelia signed the final transfer documents. The board officially appointed her chairwoman of Ashford Meridian Holdings. The announcement remained private. No media coverage, no interviews, no publicity campaign. Exactly as she preferred. For the next 2 years, she disappeared from public attention. Not because she was hiding, because she was working, while social media celebrated flashy entrepreneurs and celebrity executives. Amelia spent 18-hour days learning every corner of the business. She visited ports, warehouses, research centers, agricultural projects, technology facilities, energy investments. She met managers, engineers, farmers, analysts, executives. She listened more than she spoke, and gradually people began noticing something unusual. The billionaire heiress understood details. She remembered names. She solved problems. She made decisions carefully. Employees respected her long before newspapers discovered her existence. Success followed. New partnerships formed. Expansion accelerated. Profits increased, but Amelia never became loud. She never chased attention, never posted luxury photographs, never purchased magazine covers, never transformed pain into performance. Instead, she built. Quietly, relentlessly, patiently. 3 years passed. Then 4. By the 5th year, her influence had expanded beyond anything the previous board imagined possible. Major governments sought partnerships. Investment firms competed for meetings. Industry leaders requested her advice. Her estimated net worth surpassed $60 billion. Yet very few people recognized her face. Meanwhile, Ethan's world had changed in ways he struggled to understand. Nothing collapsed overnight. Reality rarely works that way. Instead, small problems appeared. Important introductions became harder to secure. Investors responded slower. Opportunities disappeared without explanation. Partnerships stalled. Meetings were postponed. Deals required more scrutiny. Success became work again. Actual work. Without invisible advantages operating in the background. For the first time, Ethan discovered the difference between appearing important and being important. Vanessa noticed too. Her admiration gradually weakened. Arguments increased. Patience decreased. The excitement that once surrounded Ethan slowly faded. Because admiration built on status survives only while status grows. One autumn evening, Ethan attended a prestigious international business summit in London. Hundreds of influential figures filled the ballroom. Government ministers, investment leaders, technology founders, financial executives, the kind of room Ethan desperately wanted to impress. As guests gathered for dinner, conversation suddenly shifted. Heads turned toward the entrance. A powerful investor had arrived, someone whose organization recently completed one of the largest infrastructure acquisitions in Europe. Ethan heard the whispers. "She's here." "Who?" "Ashford." "The chairwoman?" "I've never seen her in person." Neither had Ethan. Curiosity pulled his attention toward the doorway. The ballroom grew quieter. Then the doors opened. A woman entered wearing a tailored black evening gown. No excessive jewelry. No dramatic entourage. No attempt to demand attention. Yet somehow the entire room moved around her naturally. Executives approached immediately. Government officials greeted her personally. Investors waited for introductions. Ethan frowned. Something about her seemed familiar. Very familiar. The woman turned slightly, and his world stopped. His glass nearly slipped from his hand. His heartbeat vanished. His breath caught somewhere between disbelief and terror. Because standing at the center of the room was not a stranger. Not an investor. Not a mysterious billionaire. It was Amelia, his ex-wife. The woman he once seated with staff while another woman occupied her place. And judging by the respect surrounding her now, she was far more powerful than anyone in the room, including him. And for the first time in years, Ethan Blackwell understood exactly what true regret felt like. For several seconds, Ethan remained frozen where he stood. The noise of the ballroom faded into the background until all he could see was Amelia. 5 years earlier, she had walked away from his life carrying nothing but dignity and a signed divorce agreement. Now she stood surrounded by ministers, investors, diplomats, and executives whose influence stretched across continents. The transformation was so dramatic that his mind struggled to connect the woman before him with the wife he once dismissed. Yet the truth became impossible to deny. The calm posture was the same. The steady eyes were the same. The quiet confidence he had mistaken for weakness was still there, only now it carried undeniable authority. People weren't gathering around her because of beauty or social charm. They gathered because her decisions moved billions of dollars. Ethan felt a strange pressure forming inside his chest. Across the room, Vanessa followed his gaze and immediately noticed the expression on his face. She turned toward Amelia and frowned. "Who is she?" Vanessa asked. Ethan swallowed hard. "My ex-wife." Vanessa laughed at first, assuming he was joking. Then she noticed he wasn't smiling. "Your ex-wife?" she repeated. "The Amelia?" Ethan nodded slowly. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Even she had heard the name Ashford Meridian over the past few years. Everyone in serious business circles had. The company had become one of the most respected investment groups in the world. Entire industries paid attention when its leadership spoke. Vanessa stared at Amelia in disbelief. "That's impossible," she whispered. But deep down she already knew it wasn't. Meanwhile, Amelia continued greeting guests with calm professionalism. She showed no sign of nervousness despite being the center of attention. Every introduction was handled gracefully. Every conversation remained focused and intelligent. She did not dominate discussions. She elevated them. That alone separated her from many powerful people in the room. Several attendees later admitted they understood her reputation within minutes of meeting her. She listened carefully before speaking. She treated assistants with the same respect she offered ministers. She remembered names. She asked thoughtful questions. There was no performance. No arrogance. No desperate need to prove importance. Real power rarely announces itself loudly. Ethan watched all of it unfold while old memories surfaced one after another. He remembered dismissing her opinions during dinner conversations. He remembered mocking her preference for privacy. He remembered telling her she lacked ambition. The irony felt almost unbearable. The woman he considered insignificant had spent 5 years building an empire larger than anything he would ever achieve. Suddenly, every cruel word he had spoken returned like a debt demanding repayment. The evening continued until the host finally approached the stage. Conversations gradually quieted. Spotlights illuminated the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "tonight we celebrate innovation, sustainable growth, and leadership that creates lasting impact beyond quarterly profits." Applause followed. And before our keynote session begins, we would like to recognize a remarkable individual whose investments have transformed industries, created opportunities across multiple nations, and funded educational initiatives benefiting thousands of families. The audience listened attentively. "Please join me in welcoming Chairwoman Amelia Ashford." The room erupted into applause. People rose from their seats. Some cheered openly. Others lifted phones to record the moment. Ethan remained seated, unable to process what he was witnessing. Amelia walked toward the stage with the same calm pace she had always possessed. There was no dramatic entrance, no exaggerated smile. She simply moved forward while the audience continued applauding. When she reached the podium, the room finally settled into silence. Amelia looked across the crowd for several moments before speaking. "Thank you for your generosity," she said softly. Her voice was clear and steady. "Although I must confess something, recognition has never been my favorite part of this work." A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. What matters most is impact. The headlines eventually disappear. The photographs fade. Public attention shifts elsewhere. But when a young student receives an education because someone believed in their future, that impact remains. When a struggling family gains access to opportunity, that impact remains. When businesses create dignity rather than simply extracting profit, that impact remains. The audience listened carefully. Every sentence carried authenticity impossible to manufacture. Then Amelia paused. Her gaze moved slowly across the ballroom. For a brief moment her eyes met Ethan's. The contact lasted only seconds, yet it felt longer. She didn't look angry. She didn't look bitter. Somehow that hurt more. She simply looked free. Many years ago, she continued, I believed value depended upon recognition. I thought if I worked harder, gave more, sacrificed more, eventually I would earn appreciation from the people around me. The room remained silent. Life taught me a different lesson. Value exists whether others acknowledge it or not. Dignity exists whether others respect it or not. Character exists whether others reward it or not. Ethan lowered his eyes. Every word felt personal, even though she never mentioned his name. The greatest mistake people make is assuming silence means weakness. Sometimes silence is simply patience. Sometimes silence is observation. Sometimes silence is strength waiting for the right moment to speak. More applause followed. Amelia smiled gently before continuing. I also learned something equally important. Success should never become revenge. If achievement exists only to prove someone wrong, then your happiness remains controlled by the people who hurt you. Real success is freedom. Freedom to heal. Freedom to grow. Freedom to become the person you were always meant to be. The audience rose into another standing ovation. Many people wiped tears from their eyes. Others nodded thoughtfully. The speech lasted less than 10 minutes, yet it left a stronger impression than presentations twice its length. Afterward, dozens of guests approached Amelia for introductions and conversations. Business leaders requested meetings. Journalists sought interviews. Philanthropic organizations invited partnerships. She handled every interaction graciously. Eventually, Ethan gathered enough courage to move toward her. His heart pounded harder with every step. For years, he had imagined countless future scenarios. None involved standing before Amelia as the smaller person. When he finally reached her, she was speaking with several executives. One of them noticed Ethan waiting and politely stepped aside. Amelia turned. Their eyes met properly for the first time in 5 years. Hello, Ethan, she said calmly. No hostility. No emotion. Just acknowledgement. Ethan suddenly forgot every prepared sentence. Amelia was all he managed. She waited patiently. I don't know where to begin. A faint smile touched her lips. Most people don't. Ethan looked away briefly. I was wrong. The words sounded painfully inadequate. About many things. Amelia remained silent. I treated you terribly, he continued. And I didn't understand what I had. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in his voice. If I could change what happened, he stopped. Amelia studied him for a moment. But you can't, she replied gently. Ethan nodded. The truth hurt because it was undeniable. No, he admitted. I can't. Another pause followed. Are you happy? He finally asked. Amelia looked around the ballroom. At the people she worked with. At the projects she had built. At the future waiting beyond these walls. Then she smiled. A real smile. Yes, she answered. I am. Ethan felt something inside him collapse quietly. Not because she rejected him. Because he realized she no longer needed anything from him. Not approval. Not apology. Not closure. She had already built a life beyond his reach. Amelia extended her hand politely. I wish you well, Ethan. He shook it. The gesture felt strangely formal after 14 years of marriage. Then someone called her name from across the room. Amelia nodded courteously and walked away. Executives joined her. Conversations resumed around her. The crowd naturally opened paths wherever she moved. Ethan watched until she disappeared into the sea of guests. Only then did he fully understand the difference between losing a marriage and losing the person who believed in you when nobody else did. One could be replaced, the other never could. And as the gala continued around him, Ethan Blackwell stood alone with the knowledge that the woman he once treated as invisible had become unforgettable. After the gala ended, the photographs traveled across the internet faster than anyone expected. News outlets published headlines about Amelia Ashford's keynote speech. Business magazines praised her leadership philosophy. Charitable organizations highlighted her investments in education, healthcare, and community development. Videos of her remarks gathered millions of views. Yet what fascinated people most was not her wealth. It was her composure. In an age obsessed with public feuds and dramatic revenge stories, Amelia had done something unusual. She had faced the man who once humiliated her and spoken about growth instead of bitterness. The contrast captured public attention immediately. Meanwhile, Ethan returned home carrying a silence heavier than anything he had experienced before. His penthouse overlooked the city skyline, a view he once considered proof of success. Tonight it felt strangely empty. He poured himself a drink and stood by the window for nearly an hour without touching it. For years he had blamed Amelia for their marriage problems. He told himself she lacked ambition. He convinced himself she was too quiet, too reserved, too ordinary for the life he wanted. But after seeing her command an international audience with effortless confidence, those excuses collapsed. The truth became impossible to avoid. Amelia had never been the limitation. He had been. His insecurity had mistaken humility for weakness. His ego had mistaken loyalty for dependency. Worst of all, he had confused being admired with being loved. Those realizations arrived too late to change anything. Over the following months, Ethan attempted to focus on business, but concentration became increasingly difficult. Every achievement felt smaller than before. Every celebration seemed hollow. He attended meetings, signed contracts, negotiated partnerships, and appeared at conferences, yet a persistent dissatisfaction followed him everywhere. The issue was not money. He still possessed enough wealth to live comfortably for several lifetimes. The issue was perspective. Once a person recognizes what truly matters, old illusions lose their power. Ethan began noticing details he previously ignored. Employees who worked harder than executives received little recognition. Long-term friendships had been replaced by transactional relationships. People praised success but disappeared during failure. The glamorous world he spent years chasing suddenly looked fragile. He remembered Amelia supporting him during difficult years when nobody else believed in his future. He remembered her encouragement after failed presentations and rejected proposals. He remembered her defending him when others questioned his decisions. Most painful of all, he remembered how casually he threw those things away. Regret became a permanent companion. Vanessa had already left months earlier. Their relationship did not survive the changing circumstances surrounding Ethan's reputation. At first she promised support. Then came increasing distance. Eventually there were fewer calls, fewer messages, fewer appearances together. One morning she simply informed him she needed a different future. Ethan could hardly blame her. Their relationship had been built upon attraction, excitement, and appearances. When reality arrived, there was very little substance underneath. For a brief period he felt angry. Then he realized anger would be hypocrisy. After all, he had once abandoned loyalty for the illusion of something better. Now he was merely experiencing the same lesson from the opposite side. While Ethan wrestled with consequences, Amelia continued building the life she envisioned. New scholarship programs expanded across multiple countries. Affordable housing initiatives helped struggling families establish stability. Business incubators supported young entrepreneurs lacking access to traditional financing. Agricultural partnerships created opportunities in underserved communities. Thousands of people benefited from projects carrying the Ashford Foundation name, although Amelia rarely placed herself at the center of publicity. She preferred results over recognition. Her leadership style remained consistent regardless of audience size. Whether speaking to world leaders or local volunteers, she treated people with equal respect. That consistency earned something far more valuable than admiration. It earned trust. One evening nearly 2 years after the gala, Amelia attended the opening ceremony of a community education center, funded through one of her programs. The event was modest compared to international conferences and luxury galas. There were no famous celebrities, no major investors, no red carpets. Children filled the courtyard carrying books and laughing with excitement. Parents thanked volunteers. Teachers discussed future plans. The atmosphere felt genuine. After the ceremony ended, a young woman approached Amelia nervously. She appeared to be around 19 years old. "Excuse me," she said. "May I tell you something?" Amelia smiled. "Of course." The young woman took a deep breath. 3 years ago, my mother left an abusive marriage. We had nowhere to go. One of your housing programs helped us start over. Last month, I received a scholarship from your foundation. Her eyes filled with tears. Next year, I'll be studying medicine. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Amelia gently squeezed her hand. "Congratulations," she said softly. The young woman shook her head. "No, thank you. You changed our lives." Amelia watched her walk back toward her family afterward. The scene lasted less than a minute. Yet it meant more than every luxury event she had ever attended. Because impact could be measured in transformed lives, not public applause. That night, Amelia returned home after sunset. Her residence overlooked the ocean rather than a city skyline. Waves rolled steadily against the shore below. The property was beautiful, but not extravagant by billionaire standards. She had never felt the need to impress strangers. Walking onto the terrace, she paused to watch the horizon darken beneath the evening sky. The air carried the scent of salt water and distant rain. Everything felt peaceful. For several minutes, she simply stood there enjoying the quiet. 5 years earlier, silence represented loneliness. Today, it represented freedom. Freedom from constant criticism. Freedom from emotional exhaustion. Freedom from needing approval from people incapable of giving it. The difference was profound. Her phone vibrated softly. A message appeared from one of the foundation directors. Another scholarship initiative had exceeded expectations. Hundreds of additional students would receive support next year. Amelia smiled. Then she set the phone aside and continued watching the ocean. Somewhere across the world, people still discussed the story of her divorce. Some remembered the scandal. Others remembered the gala. Many focused on the wealth she inherited and the success she achieved afterward. But those details never captured the heart of the story. The real turning point occurred long before public recognition arrived. It happened the moment she stopped measuring her worth through someone else's opinion. The moment she realized respect cannot be begged for. The moment she understood that love without dignity eventually becomes suffering. Everything else followed naturally. As darkness settled over the water, Amelia thought briefly about Ethan. Not with anger. Not with longing. Simply as a chapter that had ended. Some people enter your life to stay forever. Others arrive to teach lessons you could learn no other way. Ethan belonged to the second category. She genuinely hoped he found peace. But peace was no longer her responsibility. For years she carried burdens that were never hers to carry. She would not do so again. The future stretched ahead filled with possibilities she once considered impossible. New projects, new experiences, new relationships, new dreams. Most importantly, a new understanding of herself. She was no longer the woman sitting quietly at the back table while others decided her value. She was no longer the wife waiting for appreciation that would never come. She was no longer invisible. And the remarkable thing was that her value had never depended on wealth, power, or recognition in the first place. Those things merely revealed what had always existed beneath the surface. Character, strength, grace, dignity. The qualities people overlooked when they were distracted by appearances. As the final light disappeared beyond the horizon, Amelia closed her eyes and smiled. Not because she had won against someone else. Because she had finally chosen herself, and in the end, that victory was worth more than every empire in the world.